Number one, big reason why traditional media with a $2 billion advantage over Trump did not win, because number one, people lost trust in the media. In a world of uncertainty, we're tired of being lied to. So you can spend and spend and spend, but people don't listen and they don't watch. There's about 6 corporations that own all the media. Whoever pays for the ads controls the content. I'd listen to these speeches by Trump or Kamala, and I'd watch the news and watch how they would parrot and lie about what the person said.
Welcome to the Thought Leader Revolution with Nicky. Join the revolution. There's never been a better time in history to speak your truth, find your freedom, and make your fortune. Each week, we interview the world's top thought leaders and learn the secrets of how they built a 6 to 7 figure practice. This episode has been brought to you by eCircleacademy.com, the proven system to add 6 to 7 figures a year to your thought leader practice.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the podcast, The Thought Leader Revolution. I'm your host, Nicky, and I'm back with my all-time favorite guest, Marc Von Musser. Marc, good to have you.
Great to be here. This is going to be a fun topic. And I know I watch a lot of podcasts and news and different things, and I can tell you that nobody's having the conversation or looking at it the way that we're going to tonight. So very, very important.
I wanted to introduce this topic because it's about framing how to go about winning at the game of business and what platforms will help you win. And we're going to use a very powerful case study. Before we get to the case study, let's frame the debate. The debate is, are you going to use traditional old media based on an advertising model to try to grow your business, or are you going to use new cutting edge media based on free appearances on podcasts as a guest, right, to grow your business? And the case study we're going to use is the recent election in the United States for president between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Right. And I think this is a very powerful way to illustrate this particular point, because by now I think everyone knows Trump won and Kamala lost. And what everyone may not be aware is how unlikely this was, because Kamala raised and spent over $1.4 billion between her and, associated groups. She had 100% of the traditional media behind her. And she had all this dark money, at least $1 billion that got spent without it being officially counted. While Trump only raised $400 million, he spent even less than that. Traditional media was like 97% negative and against him. And he didn't really have any dark money supporting him. And yet he won. He won. So, you want to win like Trump did, or do you want to lose like Kamala did, Marc? And I'd love for you to step in here and stack on why you believe Trump won. And again, this isn't a political conversation. This is a media conversation from a media point of view on why Kamala lost.
So let's break it down. There's a couple things here as well. There's direct linkage to people running businesses as well. That's why we're having this conversation, because right now there's a lot of the gurus saying, oh, you need to spend more on traffic. You need to spend more money on Facebook ads. You need to spend more money on YouTube ads. You should spend more, spend more, spend more. But we're looking at a glaring obvious time where that didn't work. And the question is not whether she outspent him. She outspent him by $1 to $2 billion, depending on who you listen to. Not only that, the amount, we could even get into the censorship in the Google and the social media as well, which is something we didn't even talk about. So how does a guy win when he has 97% of every news anchor talking crap about somebody? Okay. So the very first thing that I want people to think about, And there's studies that support everything I'm about to say. This is not just my opinion. This is exactly what study after study are showing. Number one, big reason why traditional media, with a $2 billion advantage over Trump, did not win, because number one, people lost trust in the media. Okay? In a world of uncertainty, we're tired of being lied to. Now, guess what? There's studies out there showing that the media, once hailed as the most trusted profession on the planet, now is almost one of the lowest type of trust levels there are. So that's a big one. So you can spend and spend and spend, but people don't listen and they don't watch either. So the second thing that as well, most people realize, except for the people that are very, very, oh God, they said it on the news, there's a small percentage. And they're the same people that watch it, and there's absolute clear agendas. Part of what people don't realize, but that it's now common knowledge, is there's about 6 corporations, mega global corporations, that own all the media. Whoever pays for the ads controls the content. And we've noticed that where we're being lied to constantly. Not only are we being lied to, they're gaslighting us, where it's like, I listened to a speech by Trump or Kamala, doesn't matter, I've listened to all of them. I'd listen to these speeches, and then I'd watch the news and watch how they would parrot and lie about what the person said, both ways. And I'm not stupid. I could look, that's not what he said, that's not what she said, and they're framing it very much like the lawsuit now against CBS, because they repackaged Kamala's responses on 60 Minutes, once heralded as one of the most cutting-edge, truth-revealing company or shows. And all of a sudden, we watched with our own eyes, heard with our own ears. We heard her response originally. That did not bode well because it was incoherent. So they put another response that was much more coherent. But the viewer is listening. And we're like, they're just lying. So when you have hundreds of lies in an order, kind of like if you guys remember Baghdad Bob, Nicky, remember Baghdad Bob?
Yep.
It's okay. Everything is okay. Nothing is happening, as bombs are blowing up behind him in Iraq, right? And we're watching with our own eyes, and that's now what's happened to traditional media. Now, the second thing as well, that people are waking up. We're tired of being lied to. Now, guess what happens in business as well? We've all spent money on programs that said one thing on traditional media, and it didn't deliver. Now we have, by comparison, new media. This is also very important because new media, and part of what you and I are doing, Nicky, with Get Booked and Get Paid, is how to harness new media to get millions and millions of listeners and to create hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue. But it is not in the old media, it is new media. And that's essentially what Trump did for free. And so what happens, though, is the same thing that you and I have been preaching now for about 6 months, was about how the new media and podcasting puts you in front of hungry audiences. So why are there millions and millions of people who used to watch the news? Why are they now on new media like podcasts? Joe Rogan, Nicky, you know the numbers better than I do, but Joe Rogan did a podcast with Donald Trump, and he spoke for, 3 hours or something, and got 30 million listeners that listened essentially to the whole thing. 50 million?
50 million on one platform, YouTube. If you combine all the platforms, it's over 120 million people.
And part of it is because we can make up our own minds whether we're going to agree with them or not. I can't tell you how many times I hear people that say, wow, I listened to him and it's not what I thought at all. It's not what the media was telling me. And so what happens, though, is that people have an awakening. They're like, wow, I wonder what else they're lying to. When we hear different people, then it's like the other one. But Nicky, if he's getting 50 million listeners for free, and then you have other people, he was on other podcasts as well.
Yep.
He was getting millions of attentive listeners, ideal clients, new voters, which was his ideal client. He was able to influence the middle demographic of undecided voters. He was able to get in front of independents, and they were able to bypass traditional media, which had an agenda. How many, by comparison, if he did Joe Rogan and had 50 million viewers and listeners, how many would he have had if he was on 60 Minutes or NBC or MSNBC or CBS?
So I did a comparison. So there were 5 major new media podcasts that he was on. He was on more, but these are the big 5. Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Valuetainment, which is Patrick Bet-David, the Nelk Boys, and Aiden Ross. And Kamala would go on 60 Minutes, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, ABC. None of the shows that she was on cracked 1 million views. So 60 Minutes, 500,000 views. CNN, 400,000 views. MSNBC, 700,000 views. Now, she went on a couple of podcasts, but they were not independent. They were people who were already a bit in the tank for her, like Shay podcast with Shannon Sharp got under 1 million views. And the Call Her Daddy podcast, which is really a sex podcast, it just normally those podcasts would be a lot more kind of open, but they were still in the stultified old media trying to push a narrative, and they got under 1 million views each. Rogan's podcast on YouTube alone got 50 million views. On all the other podcasts, over 100 million. Theo Vaughn, millions. Valuetainment, millions. I mean, I can look up the exact numbers, but Trump conservatively had 250 million views. Oh, plus X, Elon Musk interviewed him on X. He had 300 million plus views. Kamala was lucky if she got 5 million views on old traditional media. So this dwarfed any attention she could get. And on top of that, because new media, at least new media the way these guys practice it, is not agenda driven, and it's long form content. So there's no filter, there's no narrative that's trying to be pushed down people's throats, and there's no gaslighting the people. People like flock to them and watch them. So who the hell watches a 3-hour newscast? Nobody. But millions of people watch Joe Rogan for 3 hours. So this is a game changer because, Mark, it didn't matter how much money she raised. It didn't matter how much money she spent. It didn't matter how much traditional media shit on him, because the people tuned it out. Now, there's so many people here that go, oh my God, the media is against us. But you have to understand, Mark, I come from Iran, okay? And you got to give the American people a lot more credit, because in Iran, we assumed the media was lying to us. We just assumed it. And right now, the American people are assuming the media is lying to them. They filter the truth out for themselves. They become smarter. They've been forced to think in a more nimble fashion to get the facts for themselves. This, from a point of view of both business and politics, should be a wake-up call to all kinds of marketers. Because if you're going and you're doing traditional Facebook ads or Google ads and trying the slick marketing message, nobody gives a shit. Nobody's going to pay attention to you. They're going to tune you out. They're going to know you're lying. But if you go out there authentically on new media, podcast as a guest, and you have authentic, real, long-form conversations, people are going to tune in and listen to that, because the lack of filter there is going to make it difficult for anybody to lie. So they're going to just assume you're being truthful there. They're going to see that it's truth-driven and there's no gaslighting. There's no deeper agenda to try to sell them on a narrative. Now, yeah, you want to sell yourself. Absolutely. People understand that, but they want to see that you're being truthful first. That's what new media makes possible, and that's what old media, advertiser-driven media, does not make possible.
So it's interesting because the other complaint I heard from both parties, left and right, was that the very few, that Kamala was the very first time she never did a press conference where they allowed independent questions to be asked. So every question was preloaded. That there's a lot of people even within her own camp that said that they had access to the questions ahead of time. So it's essentially a scripted softball type interview, and we really didn't learn much about her. Right? No hard questions about her policies, about whether she's for fracking now or against it, whether or not she's, when they asked her if she voted for Prop 36, I believe it was, which was about making crime illegal, basically, and felonies again on, theft. She didn't answer. Now, by comparison, The reason people are flocking to new media and podcasts is because it is unscripted. It is real. Like it or not, that's up to you to decide. But if you know what you're doing and articulating your message, you can articulate a message and you have a platform that you can kind of go and speak your truth. And guess what? Not everybody's going to agree with it, but it's not going to be censored. And so what happens, though, is a lot of times people are tuning out of the forms of censorship. And so that's a really key piece as you guys are thinking about business, because with the huge audiences that you have now in podcasting, Nicky is well, you know, the statistics on podcast guests or people that listen to podcasts. Why, if I'm a business owner, why would I rather be on a podcast rather than running ads to traditional media or traditional methods? Why would podcasting be a great idea?
504 million people globally listen to podcasts. Okay. And that number has grown tenfold since 2014. Tenfold. Every year it keeps growing. Okay. Traditional media and even like ads on platforms like Facebook and Google, etc., that's stagnant or shrinking. Okay. And it's expensive. Like if you think about it, if you want to spend ads on traditional media and even on Google and Facebook, you're spending thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands a month. Going on podcasts is free. Mark, it's free. Donald Trump, so Kamala Harris, just as an example, is $20 million in debt for her on behalf of her campaign. $20 million in debt, even though she raised so much more money than Donald Trump's campaign did. Donald Trump's campaign, by taking advantage of podcasting and not having to pay, has money in the bank. And they're in a position that Donald Trump jokingly said, hey, we'll pay off her campaign debt. Right? And that was an epic troll, in my opinion. I don't think he's going to do that. But the truth of the matter is, if you're a businessman and you're going on shows, rather than spending money on ads, this is free. This is free. Okay, now here's the deal. If you're a businessman or a businesswoman and you want to go on podcasts, you can't put the lens of being an old media, slick marketing message. Let me send my people and they're going to read the talking points. The podcasters are going to kick your ass off the show in 5 minutes flat if you're coming across as salesy and marketing driven. They want authentic, real conversations with real human beings. You do that, your business is going to be seen by them and by the prospects of, oh, these guys are for real, rather than, okay, they're just trying to pitch a message. So this week on my podcast, I interviewed Pete Roberts, the CEO of Origin USA. Origin USA is leading the renaissance in American manufacturing and textiles. They're out of Maine. And they make jeans, they make boots, they make gis. It's phenomenal stuff. So, but Mark, here's what I want to say to you, right? If this guy came on and just did a big pitch on Origin USA, I'd have kicked him out in 10 minutes. But he came and he shared his story with me. He shared his personal story with me. And then he shared Origin's origin story. It's kind of neat. Origin's origin story. That's kind of fun. And that was powerful. And he told me the story of how they got into manufacturing jeans. It's a big deal to them to make jeans. They want to sell 1 million jeans a year. Right now they're selling a couple 100,000. And he said, nothing says freedom more than a pair of blue jeans. And I thought, damn, that's true, man. I mean, look at me, Mark, right now. I'm wearing my t-shirt and I'm wearing my blue jeans, right? Nothing says freedom more than a pair of blue jeans, okay? And I said, yeah, that's good. And he said, outside of Origin USA, all the major jean manufacturers, their jeans are being made by communism. By communism. Like, Mark, that hit me in the gut, man. I'm like, shit, the money I'm spending on these other brands, like, you know, the Levi's, the Wranglers, this shit's being made by China in China, by communism. Fuck that. Like, right away, Mark, he wasn't trying to sell me, but that was a powerful talking point by Origin, right? Obviously, that's a part of how they differentiate themselves and market themselves. But he told the story, and he told the story of how they bought the last major at-scale jean weaving plant in North Carolina, and then they bought the last place in Georgia, the last plant that had, fabric weaving for jeans in Georgia. So North Carolina, Georgia, he bought these, and I'm listening to the story, and I'm going, damn, I need Origin jeans. I got to buy me some Origin jeans. I got to buy from Freedom. I got to buy for Freedom. Mark, I know you're listening to this, and you're thinking to yourself, like, you're a patriotic American. It makes you want to go, shit, damn me, I got to go buy me a pair of Origin jeans made in the good old US of A. And I know everybody listening to that is saying the same thing. Now, if Pete went on and said, well, Origin USA is an American manufacturing company, and our jeans are proudly made in the USA, and this is why I'm here on this show, to get you to buy our jeans. Who the fuck would have listened to that show? People would have tuned out in 5 minutes. Instead, he spent an hour and 24 minutes with me on that show, and that hour and 24 minutes more powerfully told the story of Origin than any ad ever could.
Yeah. So the other part too is that the income for somebody listening to a podcast is the highest out of any demographic we can track. So you've got an educated, an intelligent demographic, you've got a wealthy demographic, and the one common core value of people watching podcasts and listening to podcasts is they're in the want to improve their life category.
Exactly.
So that's really, really important to think about. There's a lot of platforms where that is not the goal. Some of the platforms out there, the problem is they're not looking to improve. They're looking for entertainment. They're looking for a dopamine hit by doing nothing. So we have another big swing on new media, which is really, podcasting really rises. The other part that I thought was interesting, Nicky, is its effectiveness to find new clients, get new clients, expand your business, increase your impact. So I just want to go over a couple of your numbers. We should probably break this down to the listener.
Sure.
When we started this, nobody was making money on podcasts. Nobody knew how to make money on podcasts. We went to work. We looked at it. We evaluated the psychology of the listener. We evaluated how it was doing, what needed to happen, and it took us a little time. But since we cracked the code, which we did, you've made, correct me if I'm wrong on some of these numbers, though, you've done about $420,000 in new business.
425 now. We're up to 425.
That's awesome. $425,000 of income, and your ad spend is zero.
Correct.
Now, the other part is I went and calculated based on traditional online marketing, you would have had to spend when the market was really good and calls were only $200 to $300, which they're not now. You would have had to spend approximately $250,000 to get that much there.
Yep.
And now if it got worse, it could be as much as $400,000 or $500,000 with traditional methods. But you had zero marketing spend on that. So that's another one. But there's another thing that's really important. And the other part is now, while Nicky and I are doing this conversation, there are potentially 3 to 4 million people as they're driving home and they're looking for something to improve their life. They're going to come across Nicky's message. They're going to come across, hey, here's how we transform. Here's how I get clients. Here's how I do it. 3 to 4 million people because they're out there and his podcasts are now out there in cyberspace. What would happen to the listener here? If you are able to add $250,000, $500,000 a year, every year you're getting 3 million people there. Next year you'd have 6 million, and the year after that, 9 million, and they'll taper off. I get it. But that's so much better than just a quick hit on an ad and a deal. And it's like, because those are getting so expensive, they're less and less effective because the marketers have saturated the market. And so by comparison, guys, there's this very small window of opportunity with podcasting where if you know how to get the right message on the right show at the right time and know who to talk to and how to talk to them, you can generate new clients. You can expand your business and massively increase your impact.
That's what Donald Trump did by going on podcasts, by going on shows like Rogan, like Valuetainment, like Aiden Ross, like the Nelk Boys, like Theo Vaughn, like going on X with Elon Musk. He was looking for customers called voters, and he found them there. Those people were there ready to listen and to decide whether they were going to buy Donald Trump and his message, and the purchase was to vote for him. And Kamala Harris went on old traditional media and spent $1 gazillion and got no return. So this is like, Mark, me going on podcasts for free, okay, and making 425,000 versus some of the people you and I know who are still spending organic dollars on, old media here, traditional, tens of thousands a month. In that same period, for free, I generated 425,000. They probably spent 100,000 and they didn't even make their 100,000 back.
That's right.
That's Kamala. I'm like Trump. They're like Kamala. So you can win like Trump and spend a little bit of money, but catch the wave of the new media doing it the new way and the way we teach, or you can stick to doing it the old way, the Kamala way, and blow all your money, go into debt, and not get it all back.
Yeah, it's very true. And the one thing that I loved about podcasting is, again, if you know how to select your shows, because you do need to know how to get on the right shows. But if you think about it, I remember Romney said something, and he got, back when he was running for president, he got filleted for it, but he was absolutely right. He basically said 47% of the country is going to vote for the Democrat no matter what, and about 47%, 45% will vote for the Republican no matter what, right? So he said the entire campaign is really for that 6 to 9% of undecideds or influenceable voters. Okay. Now there's other demographics that they've identified, like the seldom voter and different voters, the low
propensity voters, they call them low propensity voters, LPVs.
They have those. But when Trump went on these podcasts, he went on podcasts where there were a large amount of undecided voters, libertarians, independents, young voters, the low propensity voters. So he was able to target his message. And I watched several people say, you know what, I heard a lot of crap about Trump, but I watched him on Joe Rogan, and you know what, I agree with him and I'm voting for him. First time ever. And imagine what happened here. So he was able to target that in that middle group of people that were making up their mind. Because the election, even though he won 312 electoral votes, he won the first time he won the popular vote, it was still 51 to 47. It's still pretty close. And so what happens, though, people don't realize, but the person out there you're trying to find, your buyer, there's many different ways that they are looking to make a decision. And when you can go, this is something, Nicky, you and I talked about before we had the vaccine and the lockdowns and all of that. The average person could watch a Facebook ad, watch a webinar, and spend 15 to 20 minutes listening to something and make a decision to buy a program. Well, something happened as people got more and more uncertain, as they got swindled more and more because they were overpromised and underdelivered, how the people they bought didn't deliver. They became more skeptical. Throw on top of that an economy, and don't listen to the politicians who tell you inflation's handled at 2%. That's nonsense. For those of you that still believe that, do yourself a favor. Go back and look at the price of gas, food back in 2020 and then in right now. There is no mathematical equation you can get 2 to 4% inflation, okay? And so what happens, they're trying to spew that to everybody, and people are like, what are you talking about? I'm paying $5.50 a gallon gas, and you're telling me that gas went down 5 cents? And so what happens is that you can target your people. Now, on a podcast today, because of all of that uncertainty and gaslighting, the average buyer today has been shown to need almost 3 hours of information before they'll pull the trigger. Now, guess what's perfect for that? Podcasting. Very similar. I could go listen to you, Nicky, on a podcast, and you did 30 minutes on this one. I'm going to listen to a couple more to see if you're really the same guy. Or are you a charlatan where you're jumping around to whoever you're in front of and try and speak what you think they want to hear? And so what happens is it's a perfect platform that lives forever, and it gives the people as many as they want. I know one lady, she told me she listened to all 200 of the episodes that I did on Facebook Lives. 200 podcasts and Facebook Live. She listened to every one. That's how uncertain they are. And that's why podcasting is such a good thing. But make no mistake, one of the biggest mistakes, the first biggest mistake, Nicky, that people make is they aren't on podcasts. That's the first mistake. The second mistake, they don't know how to do it. They get on the wrong podcast. The third is they don't know how to articulate their message. And they come across as, oh, let's just chat. Chatting is not enough to get new clients.
It's not. It's not. So here's the keys to success on podcasts on the new media platforms. First of all, you need to know what shows to get on. You need to know what shows to avoid going on and why. This is important because if you don't know how to do this, you could waste a lot of time and burn a lot of cycles and get zero results. Donald Trump had a podcast advisor. It was his son, Barron. His son, Barron, knew who all the major popular podcasters were, and he told Trump which ones to go on and which ones not to go on. And Trump went on Rogan, on Aiden Ross, on Theo Vaughn. He went on Valuetainment, right? He was on Nelk Boys, and he went on X with Elon Musk. And he avoided, fluffy ones like Kamala Harris went on, like Shay Shay, Club Shay Shay, and, Called Her Daddy, which is a sex podcast. And I got to tell you, it just makes no sense for a presidential candidate to go on a sex podcast. As a result, the good shows that Trump went on amplified his message and helped him get more voters, more customers. And the shows that Kamala went on shit on her message and had her actually lose bigger than she should have. So that's number one. So you got to figure this out. And that's not easy to do on your own. Secondly, and this is super important, you need to know what to say and how to say it. And just as important, you need to know what not to say and why. When Trump went on shows, he had his talking points. Like, it was an organic conversation and all of that, but he had his talking points. He was going to talk about inflation. He was going to talk about the border. He was going to talk about illegal immigration. He was going to talk about building the wall. He was going to talk about ending the forever wars, like in the Middle East and in the Ukraine. And those were the points he was going to get into. And he was also going to make a powerful point about free speech and making sure that we preserve free speech and made America healthy. So he had all his talking points. He had the stories that he was going to tell. There was a very particular way that he did this. Even though it was an organic conversation, he always knew what he was going to say, okay? And what not to say was super important. Kamala, on the other hand, would go on shows and she did not say what she needed to say. What she needed to say was she needed to have a narrative for how she was going to be different from the current administration. She needed to have a narrative for why what she was bringing to the table was going to be more effective than Trump's. She didn't do any of that. She just came in with a script that Trump is bad, and that is not a good message, right? And for you to go on a show and just say, we're great, this is why it's not going to work. You can't just say what you've been saying marketing message-wise. You need to have a powerful narrative. You need to say it in a particular way.
And Nicky, let me interrupt you for a second because there's another key sub point here I want to point out. Kamala went on a couple of podcasts, not many, but she was speaking to groups that would have already voted for her, right?
Yes.
So there was no benefit. And then Trump, he actually did not go on any of the extreme conservative sites because he knew they were going to vote for him too. He went for his ideal client, the low propensity voter, the undecided voter, the independent, and the libertarians. And when you look at the margin of victory, you can very easily point and saying the margin of victory was determined and pulled from those voters that broke for Trump because of what he said on the podcast. It's the same thing as a business.
It's, again, being on the right show and avoiding going on the right to see. So you're saying he avoided going on the conservative ones because he already had those guys. So that's true too. And the final really important point is you need to be able to ask for the sale. Trump asked for people's votes. And you need to be able to ask for what you want. Your call to action's got to be very clear, and you need to know how not to ask for it. Because if you ask for it the wrong way or in a wishy-washy way, or you have several calls to action, you're going to blow it. And that's what Kamala did. Trump's bad, and you shouldn't vote for him. No, I'm great, and you should vote for me should have been what she said, which is what Trump said. And you need to learn how to do this for your business and why you got to ask for it in a certain way. So yes, you want to think about avoiding old media 100% for all the reasons we said. It's advertising driven. It's expensive. It's scripted. It's ineffective. And the ROI is going down. And you want to go on podcasts because it's long form. So there's no filter. You can get to the people that way. And it's free and it's unscripted. It's becoming more effective all the time. And the ROI is through the roof for all these reasons. These are the things that'll work for you. And if you want to learn how to do this, and not have to figure it out on your own, I want to just invite you. This is our call to action. Mark and I are doing a 2-day workshop, December 27th and 28th. It's called Get Booked and Get Paid. We're going to put the link in the show notes. Go and sign up for this workshop. This workshop is worth $10,000. We are offering it for just $2,000. That's it. It's never going to be at this price again. Believe me, in the new year, the price is going to go up. Take advantage of this. The dates are December 27, 28. Go do the show. The link will be in the show notes. Make sure that you do this, and make sure that you take detailed notes of this entire conversation, because we have given you gold that you can use right now to improve your marketing and messaging efforts. But if you really want to take it to another level, attend this workshop December 27, 28. I'll give you the last word, Mark.
There's one last warning I want to throw out to people. And because podcasting is becoming such a hot topic, there's agencies popping up and they're charging between $2,000 and $20,000 a month, like PR agents, where they promise you 2 to 5 podcasts a month, right? Don't fall for it. Nicky, once you know the secret that we teach in the workshop, how many podcasts a month can you get on for free?
720.
720 a month that is available to you. Now, granted, those aren't all going to be perfect fit, but it's a hell of a lot better than spending $5,000, $10,000 a month to get on 5. Okay. Don't do the agencies. And guys, I've watched people that will do hundreds of podcasts, but they don't know what to say. They don't know what podcast to get on. They don't know how to articulate their message, and they get no sales. Okay, so this is for less than 1/2 of 1 month of those agencies. You're going to know what to say, who to say it to, how to enroll people, and how to get as many clients off of podcasting as you want. And it's a whole lot of fun. The results that we're getting are absolutely mind-boggling. And again, just as there is a transition in old media to new media, I watch the advertisers and the media saying, oh my God, people aren't interested in politics. I swear to God. Ratings are down 25 to 40%. No, they're not down. They're down on your lying shows. They are now moving over where they can get truthful responses. The same thing is happening in marketing. The marketing listener is shifting to podcasts. There's still some over there, just like there's still some on traditional media. But the ones that are listening, the ones that want better lives, they're moving over to podcasts because they're tired of being gaslit. But don't mistake being on a podcast as the magic. The magic is knowing your message, knowing who to say it to, when to say it, what not to say, and all those different pieces we talked about. So looking forward to seeing you guys in December, but don't put this off. Everything has a lifespan in business and marketing. Blogging was big, websites were big, webinars were big, launches were big, and then they have a die because marketers will overdo it. We've got a very tight window of opportunity here. The people that get out in the front of it, they're going to get the wind at their backs, and they're going to get a ton of clients before everybody else starts copying. So just some food for thought.
Thanks, Mark. That's awesome. Guys, great being with you. And that's a wrap. We'll see you at the end of December. Bye-bye.
This episode has been brought to you by eCircleAcademy.com, the proven system to add 6 to 7 figures a year to your thought leader practice.